Comparative statics with discrete, relatively large changes. We can determine the comparative statics properties of an equilibrium by examining the effects of a discrete, relatively large change in one environmental variable. We can do so by solving for the before and after equilibria and comparing them using mathematics or a graph. We illustrate this approach using our beloved pork example. Suppose all of the environmental variables remain constant except the price of hogs, which increases by 25%. It is now more expensive to produce pork because the price of a major input, hogs, has increased. Because the price of hogs is not an argument to the demand function, a change in the price of an input does not affect consumers' desires. The demand curve does not shift. However, as we saw in figure 2.4, the increase in the price of hogs causes the supply curve to shift 15 units to the left from capital S superscript 1 to capital S superscript 2. At every possible price of pork. Figure 2.7 reproduces this shift of the supply curve and adds the original demand curve. At the original equilibrium price of pork, $3.30, consumers will want to buy 220 million kilograms, but suppliers are now willing to supply only 205 million kilograms at that price, so there is excess demand of 15. Market pressure then forces the price of pork upward until it reaches the new equilibrium, E sub 2. At E sub 2, the new equilibrium price is $3.35, and the new equilibrium quantity is 215 million kilograms. Thus, the increase in the price of hogs causes the equilibrium price of processed pork to rise by 25 cents per kilogram, but the equilibrium quantity to fall by 15 million kilograms. Figure 2.7, the equilibrium effect of a shift of the supply curve. Caption reads, a 25% increase in the price of hogs causes the supply curve for processed pork to shift to the left from capital S superscript 1 to capital S superscript 2, driving the market equilibrium from E sub 1 to E sub 2, and the equilibrium price from $3.30 to $3.55. Here the increase in the price of a factor causes a shift of the supply curve and a movement along the demand curve. We can drive the same result by using equations to solve for the equilibrium before the change and after the discrete change in the price of hogs, and by comparing the two equations. We have already solved for the original equilibrium, E sub 1, by setting the quantity in the demand function, equation 2.3, equal to the quantity in the supply function, equation 2.7. We obtain the new equilibrium, E sub 2, by equating the quantity in the demand function, equation 2.3, to that of the new supply function with a 25-cent higher price of hogs, equation 2.8. 286 minus 20p equals 73 plus 40p. Simplifying this expression, we find that the new equilibrium price is P sub 2 equals $3.55. Substituting that price into either the demand or the supply function, we learn that the new equilibrium quantity is capital Q sub 2 equals 215, as figure 2.7 shows. Thus, both methods show that an increase in the price of hogs causes the equilibrium price to rise and the equilibrium quantity to fall. Application, occupational licensing. To work in many occupations in the United States, you must have a license. More than 800 occupations require licenses issued by local, state, or federal government agencies, including animal trainers, dietitians, and nutritionists, doctors, electricians, embalmers, funeral directors, hairdressers, librarians, nurses, psychologists, real estate brokers, respiratory therapists, salespeople, teachers, and tree trimmers, but not economists. During the early 1950s, fewer than 5% of U.S. workers were in occupations covered by licensing laws at the state level. Since then, the share of licensed workers has grown, reaching nearly 18% by the 1980s and at least 20% in 2000 and 29% in 2008. Licensing is more common in occupations that require extensive education. More than 40% of workers with a post-college education are required to have a license, compared to only 15% of those with less than high school education. To obtain a license in some occupations, you must pass a test, which is frequently designed by licensed members of the occupation. By making exams difficult, current members of the occupation can limit entry by new workers. For example, only 37.1% of people taking the California State Bar examination in February 2010 passed it, although all of them had law degrees. The national rate for lawyers passing the state bar exams in 2009 was higher, but still only 53%. To the degree that testing is objective, licensing may raise the average quality of the workforce. However, too often its primary effect is to restrict the number of workers in an occupation. To analyze the effects of licensing, we can use a graph similar to figure 2.7, where the wage is on the vertical axis and the number of workers per year is on the horizontal axis. Licensing shifts the occupational supply curve to the left, which reduces the equilibrium quantity of workers and raises the equilibrium wage. Kleiner and Kruger, 2010, find that licensing raises occupational wages by 15% on average.